As discussed in last week's video about the youth of Hercules, he was the son of the god of gods Zeus and the mortal Alcmene. Understandably, the wife of Zeus, Hera, was not all that happy about the affair of Zeus, and the result of that was that she resented Hercules. So one day, Hera drives him into a fit of madness, and during that episode, Hercules kills his wife and children. After he gets back to his senses, he realizes the terrible things he has done and goes for advice to the Oracle of Delphi. But he does not know that the Oracle was under the influence of Hera, and Hercules is advised to serve his cousin, King Eurystheus, for 10 years and do any task that the king would ask him for. Eurystheus decided to assign 10 seemingly impossible labors to Hercules, and later would add 2 more to that list, leading to the famous 12 labors of Hercules. The first labor for Hercules was to kill the Nemean Lion. The lion was a monster whose golden fur was impervious to human weapons, and its claws were stronger than the best sword and could easily cut through armor. But Hercules did not know this, so when he found the lion, he tried to shoot his arrows at it, but they simply bounced off the lion unharmed. Hercules waited until the lion returned to its cave, blocked one of the 2 entrances, and entered the second entrance in the dark. He surprised the lion with his club and ultimately strangled him with his bare hands. But according to some versions, this defeat came at the cost of losing a finger, which the lion bit off. After killing the lion, he tried to take the skin of the lion with his knife, but that was impossible. The goddess Athena advised him to use the claw of the lion to take its skin off, which worked out. He returned with the dead lion to Eurystheus, who was highly surprised and told him that he could never enter his city again, and that the tasks from now on would only get more difficult. The second labor was to slay another monster, the Lernaean Hydra, and this is one of the 2 most popular labors depicted by artists over time. The Hydra was a large serpent living in a lake with multiple heads, especially raised by Hera to kill Hercules. The first idea for Hercules was to kill the heads one by one. Only problem was that when he removed one head, a new one would grow back. So Hercules asked for the help of his nephew Iolaus, with whom he traveled together. Every time Hercules removed one of the heads, his nephew would burn the stumps such that the new head could not grow. And according to a popular version of the story, one of the heads was immortal, so he could not kill it, and instead buried it in the ground below an enormous stone. When he killed the Hydra, Hercules dipped his arrows in the poisonous blood of the monster. This would be a helpful move, as on the way back from the Hydra he came across the centaur Nessus, and he was able to use one of the poisoned arrows to kill this centaur. Later in his labors, Hercules will use these poisoned arrows several times again to kill some other mythological creatures. But this centaur Nessus would ultimately get his revenge on Hercules, as much later his poisoned blood would lead to the death of Hercules, but I saved that story for a future video about the life of Hercules. Eurystheus noticed that the strength of Hercules was unmatched, so he came up with an alternative task. This time he had to catch the Ceryneian Hind, a beast with unmatched speed, such that it could never be hit by an arrow. Hercules would chase the hind for a full year before finally catching it, according to one version of the story while it was sleeping, using a trapping net. This is one of several labors that has received little attention by artists. For the fourth labor, Eurystheus wanted Hercules to bring the Erymanthian Boar to him alive. And this is a good moment to mention that the labors of Hercules are not written in a single book, but that several different mythological books recall one or more of his labors, and that these stories do not always align neatly. Anyway, the short and most common version of how he caught the Erymanthian boar is that on advice of the centaur Chiron, he trapped the boar in the deep snow and carried the enormous boar back to the king. For some reason, I could not find a single decent painting portraying the fifth labor, which is Hercules having to clean the stables of King Augeas. The only art related to this labor are either very old reliefs or more modern satirical pieces. Anyway, the story is that over 1,000 immortal cattle lived in these stables and that they produced enormous amounts of dung or poop. The stables had not been cleaned for over 30 years, but Hercules promised to clean them in a single day. He did so by rerouting 2 large rivers such that they went straight through the stables. Next up for Hercules were the Stymphalian Birds, who had beaks made of bronze, sharp feathers made of metal, and they liked to eat humans. These birds stayed in a marsh, and Hercules could not reach them on foot. So instead he climbed a nearby mountain and used a rattle which he had gotten from Athena. The sound of this rattle scared the birds, and they would fly out of their nests. This was the moment that Hercules used to get his arrows with poison tips from the blood of the Lernaean Hydra and killed them one by one. The ones that got away fled the area and flew far away. Hercules then picked up several of the dead birds and brought them back to King Eurystheus as proof. And notice in this last painting by Albrecht Dürer that in some version of the story, the birds were a mix between a woman and a bird. The seventh was one of the easier labors for Hercules. He had to capture the Cretan Bull. This bull had an interesting history, as Poseidon had sent a beautiful white bull to King Minos, who promised to sacrifice the bull. But as the bull was so pretty, he substituted it with another bull. The consequence was that Poseidon made the wife of Minos fall in love with the bull, which led to the birth of the famous Minotaur in the labyrinth. Anyways, Poseidon put the bull full with rage, and the bull was still in possession of King Minos. When Hercules visited Minos, he asked for the bull, and Minos allowed him to take this mad creature. Certainly not easy to contain, but not the most difficult of all labors for the powerful Hercules. The eighth labor is known as the Mares of Diomedes, referring to a group of very large horses who enjoyed eating people. They were owned and chained by the Greek king Diomedes, and the only way to calm these ferocious horses down was to give them human meat. There are several variants on how Hercules tamed them exactly, but the bottom line is that he gave them human meat, allowing him to bind their mouths. And the subject that artists enjoyed capturing was the moment that Hercules fed the body of King Diomedes, their previous owner, to them. Labor number 9 sent Hercules to a faraway group of people known as the Amazons, a group of female warriors. Their queen named Hippolyta owned a special belt which she had gotten from her father, the god Ares. According to one version, Hercules was asked to retrieve this special war belt because Eurystheus wanted to give it to his daughter. Another version tells that Hercules was sent there because it was thought that he would not survive his visit to these female warriors. Anyway, when Hercules arrived at the Amazons, the queen was so impressed with him that she wanted to give him the belt outright. But the goddess Hera interfered and made the Amazons distrust Hercules, and they ultimately attacked him. But they were no match to Hercules and his buddies, and a large fight ensued. Hercules was forced to kill their leader, Hippolyta, to bring the belt back to Eurystheus. Next up was a confrontation with the giant Geryon, from whom he had to steal his cattle. Problem was that Geryon was enormous and had 3 heads, 3 shields, and 3 swords, and according to some versions, 3 bodies. Once again, Hercules could use the poisoned arrows he obtained from the second labor and killed the giant. Next challenge was to bring back his beautiful cattle. On his way back, he passed along the future site of the city of Rome, and there a man named Cacus stole some of his cattle, forcing Hercules to take revenge and kill that guy, as we can see in these paintings. So originally, Hercules had to complete 10 labors, but by now I'm about to discuss the 11th labor. So what happened? Well, King Eurystheus figured that Hercules had cheated in 2 of his labors. First, he had had help from his nephew when killing the Lernaean Hydra. And then he took some payment for cleaning the Augean Stables, which was not allowed. Although other sources say that he cheated with his 6th labor, the Stymphalian Birds, because he received some outside help from the goddess Athena, who supplied him with the rattle. Anyway, the consequence was that Eurystheus decided that he had to complete 2 more labors, starting by obtaining 3 of the golden apples from the garden of the Hesperides. The Hesperides were the daughters of Atlas, who was holding up the celestial skies, and they were the nymphs of the evening. Their garden was located near the spot where Atlas was holding the skies, and Hercules offered Atlas to get some relief from holding the skies if he was willing to get 3 of the golden apples from their garden. The deal was made. Atlas collected the apples, but when he came back, Atlas decided that he did not want to hold the skies anymore. Alright, Hercules agreed on the condition that Atlas could hold the skies just for less than a minute so that Hercules could adjust his cloak before standing there forever. Obviously this was a trick, and Hercules left with the 3 apples to complete his 11th labor. The last labor was for Hercules to capture the 3-headed dog named Cerberus, who guarded the entrance to the underworld. So for that, he had to go to Hades, the king of the underworld, and he asked him whether he could bring his dog back to complete his labor. Hades agreed on the condition that Hercules could not use any weapons to subdue the dog, which was no problem for Hercules, and he brought Cerberus back to King Eurystheus. The king was so scared to see the dog that he asked Hercules to return the dog to the underworld, and he released him from any further labors. What happened to Hercules after the completion of these 12 labors will be the subject of the next video in this series. Well, I hope you enjoyed this overview, and I would love to hear your thoughts about the labors of Hercules in the comment section down below. And if you want to support the channel, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. Thanks for watching.